Listen to that, huh?
What?
You said you wanted to know.
Yeah.
So come on.
How much do you need?
A few hundred.
How do you let this happen? How do you get to a place where that makes sense?
What happened?
The movie is called This Beautiful City, but very contrary to the title, it's very grim and ugly in some way, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, I like to think of it. I mean, obviously, people have differing opinions on it, but I mean, I like to think that it's challenging certain ideas of beauty, because I think the characters, in my mind, even though they're ugly in some ways, I think there's a sort of a beautiful heart to them, even though even if they're, you know, they're all flawed people that are struggling, and I think there's an honesty that I find beautiful, and that's so there is for me still. It's not entirely an ironic title. Like there is, I believe in there can be sort of beauty in darkness, or beauty in you know, a urine stained alley can be beautiful when photographed a certain way, you know, and and trying to find the elements of that can sort of ring true.
Hey! She's trying to quit. Just, you know, I want what's right.
Now you mentioned the characters, because you call them all flawed, and they all mean well, but they can't really seem to get that through, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is ultimately a bunch of people that, you know, I think suffer from some form of repression and an inability to communicate their wants to the people they love. And you could imagine the film going in a very different direction. That it's like, if only he could tell his wife this, or if only... And I think that's why it's kind of a bit of a classic tragedy in the Shakespearean sense, in that, I mean, what defines comedy versus tragedy in Shakespeare is how many bodies are left at the end of the film, right? I mean, it's the consequences, because in comedy things go badly, but eventually people have a flaw that can then they learn from their mistake and they can fix it. Whereas in tragedy, it's where people's flaws are to such a degree that they can never change. And for us as an audience, it becomes a learning lesson of don't do that.
No more, okay?
You don't.
I do.
No more last ones, all right?
It's 20. But you see
Happy people don't leap from buildings. Not people in happy, loving marriages.
I didn't leap.
That is such a load of bull.
You seen her? Her family's looking for her.
Hey!
Yeah.
The point of the movie then, that everybody has their pain and their flaws, and that you want to show the different aspects of society, and that the junkie has kind of the same problems that the rich guy has in some way.
In some way, I mean, I think for me, it's just one of the sort of thematic ideas that I was interested in exploring is, well, on a personal level, I'm always just intrigued by what does it take for you know, like any human being to hit rock bottom, and to look at, like, in any, you can call someone, like, whether it's an addict or a prostitute, I mean, all of those people could have been you, and it's for me the question of, like, what circumstances in your life might have led you down to be, like, the point where you're actually, you know, a crack addicted prostitute versus, you know, say, like a wealthy millionaire, or, you know, because I think anybody has the potential in some ways of turning out a myriad of different ways. But there was a thematic idea, I think, that sometimes people have to hit rock bottom before they can actually, you know, rise from the ashes like a phoenix. And I think, for me, the one character that Abel is able to do that is Carol, where, you know, even though it's not like she ends up with the perfect circumstances by the end of the film, but I think there's at least a little bit of hope that she's going to move on and figure out, because I think that's it. When people become consumed with something, it's not just enough to tell them that they're consumed, or for them to try and change. Like, sometimes their lives have to fall apart as a result of that in order for them to start fresh and figure out who they are and what they want.
Talked about that movie is kind of grim and a little bit ugly, but there's some beauty in it. But does that have something to do with the use of the Super 16 camera, for instance, which I thought was interesting in this movie, because there's a lot of handheld and a lot of shaky scenes, and it was that to get the realism out of the characters and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a sort of semi kind of doc approach to the film. I mean, we obviously, not that we were trying to make a dogma film by any means, but, one of the things that we were definitely influenced by those films was the immediacy of the performances that was captured. So, I mean, at the same time, I think 16 is a very organic format. And what we really went for in terms of the lighting was pretty much all, like, trying to find the beauty in the natural lighting. So we would augment, like, we would light, but, a lot of the scenes where people are walking down streets, I think and you're like, wow, it can look, that's a really pretty shot, but it's because you're using the light that exists and finding beauty within that, as opposed to trying to create like a Hollywood lit scene. So it's more about people walking through darkness and into pools of light and just finding ways to stage the scenes that actually can be beautiful but at the same time realistic. And I think it's finding beauty in realism as opposed to trying to create an artificial idea of beauty.